All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back for another Esports Weekly Roundtable, and we've talked a lot about the big League of Legends World Championships that are happening this weekend, but League was gaining popularity just about the time that this little game StarCraft 2 was on top of the world, and that was, of course, a game near and dear to my heart, brought me into the esports scene professionally, and joining us this week, we have two very special guests to talk about that. First up, we have Jeff iNcontroL Robinson, longtime player, commentator for Evil Geniuses. You've pretty much done everything for StarCraft at this point. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. And I'm always looking forward to talk about StarCraft.
Sweet, awesome. And just to his side, of course, we have Paulo Vizcarra, otherwise known as CatZ. He is a longtime StarCraft 2 player, owner of the team Root Gaming. How are you doing, man?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's talk about this very frankly at first. StarCraft is a scene that had massive popularity a few years ago. I would argue to say that it was what created the latest esports boom. It showed us a lot of the templates for how events are supposed to be run. It brought forth the streaming that we see on Twitch, things like that. You guys have both written some articles about the current health of StarCraft 2. So in a word, how do you feel about the health of the StarCraft scene right now?
I was going to jump in even in your introduction because a lot of people always kind of talk about StarCraft and say like, oh, it's struggling. You know, if you want to be especially vulgar, people are like, it's a dead game, it's dying. I would ask people to take more of the approach of like, it's in its twilight years. It's the elderly couple that ushered us into this wonderful place. Like when your grandparents walk in the room, you never describe them as like, well, they've been struggling lately. They're
Can't wait to put them down.
They're dying. Is the fan base as large as it was in 2010? No. Is the game selling in droves? Does it have 30 million subscriptions? It does not. And of course, I always feel a little bit like an apologist every time I give this defense, but it's like, it's a really hardcore game. And in this day and age, for a game to be played year in, year out, it's really difficult and rare to see that actually ever happen. So for the fact that it's 2010 when this game came out, like you said, and kind of changed the surface of gaming, and now in 2015, we're about ready to see Legacy of the Void come out. There's still 250,000 people that play it. It's still got tournaments. I'm still pretty happy with it. Of course, it is not your League of Legends, not your Dota, your CSGO, but it's great. And I think there's a lot for us to talk about. And what I like talking about too is it's not perfect. It's there's like a geopolitical gaming system going on here too. And both CatZ and I are very opinionated. And we're excited to talk about it too.
Okay, absolutely. So let's just go ahead and start right off with that then. Cool. So in your article, you had mentioned that the RTS genre itself may actually be kind of a dead genre. StarCraft may be the last game. So let's talk about why StarCraft maybe isn't as popular as it used to be right now. Is it because RTS is inherently just too difficult for people to try and get their head around? There are easier opportunities into competitive gaming and esports? Or is it something that is with the game itself right now?
That's a tough question. I personally enjoy RTS more than anything. I like the strategy. It's StarCraft 2 is the hardest game out there, right? Mm-hmm. And in that sense, I think it has its own space, and RTS as a genre has its own space, and it's not being exploited properly. I think that RTS should be more or less the games that carry the flag for esports, because it's the game that you point towards and you say, look at that, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. You know, this is like a sport. This guy is fast, this guy is smart, this guy plans. It's just the most complete game, and it's a 1 versus 1 game, of course. So,
well, I would actually compare it to Quake, right, in that regard, because Quake was one of those games that was just not easy to play at all. Right, it was a very tough game to play. You had to pre-plan. You had to know.
Not very good graphics.
Yeah, not very good graphics, like at all. But still, it was a very difficult game to play, right? Mm-hmm. But I always found out to be the charm of it. You know, I would say for me personally, I'll never forget when StarCraft 2 came out, because a lot of people that I knew were like, oh, you know, this is a new opportunity, brand new game to become good at, and I was like, yeah, sure. And I picked it up for the first time, and I was just garbage. Like mm-hmm. I was, you know, I thought I was doing a good job. I was only using a mouse. I was like, man, this is easy. I'm just clicking buttons here. And then I like saw my friend Trevor play, and he was just, you know, his APM was just insane. And then only to find out that there was like a tier above that, and then a tier above that. Do you feel that that's something that may have just shied away? You know, I'm certain that it was. Yeah. But do you feel that's actually been good for it? Because you see better players because of that, right?
Yes, and I actually, to kind of wrap all of you into this, I really like what CatZ and you said, like the spirit of RTS in general, but specifically StarCraft, I think is a game that's going to kick you in the butt. You can't do that. It's really hard. And I like that transcends into esports, where if I'm watching someone compete and they're making a lot of money, they're playing on TV, they need to be doing something I can recognize as special, mm-hmm. as something that I perhaps could not do. And I think RTS does do that better than anybody else. But to your point, and to the health of StarCraft, the overall kind of subject and what I was talking about in the article, I think as society kind of moves forward, and when I say society, I guess it's a more, I'm trying to sound smart, but it's really just the world, planet Earth as it moves forward. Most people in every facet of their life are looking for kind of easier, a little bit more immediate gratification. There are people, of course, that still read books and like do other things, but
those books.
But for for the average gamer, and when I say the average gamer, I literally mean that. The average gamer, they do, I think, for the most part, want a game that's going to give them kind of more immediate rewards. The entry to barrier is a lot lower, and I'm not down talking games. I'm not saying StarCraft's better than everything else. What I'm saying is, on the most average person, and that's the games that this is appealing to. And when I say this, I mean the bigger games. They understand what's happening earlier on, and they're getting something out of it. StarCraft, you have to jumpstart an economy. You're starting off with the most boring units every single game, and then you build your way up from the most boring to the more exciting, typically speaking.
Sure.
CatZ makes a lot of Zerglings, whatever. Just kidding. But like, it's one of those games where you could sit down after a day of work, play, and the other guy's like, you're a noob, and then he just smashes you, just crushes you, and there's no gratification. You like never got out of your base, you never made a cool unit, you just got smothered. And that can be someone's experience. So I think RTSs appeal to a smaller group of people, whereas other games appeal to a larger group. And as long as you can accept that and just say, okay, well, 2010 was nice and it was an anomaly. Now we're in 2015 pushing onward. It's going to be a smaller audience, but it's going to be a great audience.
But I'll push you on that. Why was it an anomaly, Phil? Why was the secret sauce there that in 2010 this took off? Was it something that was external outside of the game? Maybe it was just streaming and we could all see this awesome play on display and everyone wanted to try because there was nothing else out there? Was it because StarCraft was tangibly a different game? What was it, do you think, that gave it that special sauce back in 2010?
I feel like it was like a huge, weird storm of perfect things happening at the same time. Twitch comes up, which is a streaming service that had appealed to more people and done better at the time. StarCraft was borrowing fame and recognizable imagery off of a game that had already been out since 1998 and was just updating that. So people were excited about it no matter what. You put that on a streaming platform and it's an RTS game that, again, has this like tradition of excitement and competition around it. And all of a sudden people are using the word esports and they're talking about competition. And then you look at these other games that are coming out, like your LoL, League of Legends, Dota, CSGO, and other games. And all of those games are based around competition, but they're coming out in a universe where gaming is like not just something that I play Witcher 3 on, which is a great game, but no one's talking about Witcher 3 esports. They're talking about, oh my God, Rocket League is fantastic. They're talking about, is Overwatch, does it have the ability to be that game that we play for 10 years?
So something that you talked about in your article, specifically, Jeff, was that the scene doesn't need to be the #1 esport in the world. Right. It just needs to have a sustainable life behind it. We have Legacy of the Void that's coming around the corner. Do you think that there's a stable platform of StarCraft for the next few years?
I do, but to be honest with you, too, it's going to be... It's been the reason there's kind of this like atmosphere of almost negativity around StarCraft, where people are saying unhealthy or dying, is because it was inflated. In 2010, there were so many people, like leagues were like, casters, we're hiring you, we're going to start this league, oh my God, we'll get 100,000 people on stream. Like, people were getting snatched up and given jobs. And then as time goes on and those jobs start to thin out because all of a sudden they're like, well, no, actually we're more of a CSGO league. We notice our audience likes that a lot more. Or, you know what, Heroes of the Storm is doing really great. We're going to kind of focus on that. So the jobs for StarCraft become less and less. The teams that are sponsoring, CatZ can talk a lot about this as a team owner, all of a sudden he's like, you know what, I'm not going to hire 5 more StarCraft players. Actually, I need to have a Hearthstone guy. I need to have some money here. I only have so much money. It goes this far. So we're seeing players retire. We're seeing teams close StarCraft divisions. We're seeing leagues move away from StarCraft. And everyone gets in their head that they're like, oh my God, the game must suck. Nobody wants to play it. It's not true. It's just kind of a recession back from how inflated and big it got. And I do believe in 2015 and moving forward, we're going to have a healthy StarCraft scene. And what that looks like is 1 or 2 major tournaments a month, maybe every other month. We're going to have professional players. We're going to have a huge scene in Korea. If that's good enough for you, you're going to be happy. If everyone that ever says, I want to play StarCraft 2 professionally, and then they get their ass handed to them, if that's what you want, you're going to be disappointed because that's not the scene for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, are there opportunities for the scene to continue growing, though? We have people that are outside of StarCraft that are trying to do some unique things. Day9's company, for example, Artillery, is putting together a very team-focused RTS game right now. Does either StarCraft through Legacy of the Void, the new features, Archon mode, things like that, have a chance to bring more people into it, or should we just kind of be content with this awesome, very dedicated group that still plays and loves the game every day?
I actually kind of think that StarCraft 2, from a viewer perspective, is actually a little bit easier to get into for viewers than most of the other games. following what's going on in a Dota 2 or League of Legends game, you kind of have to play the game. For StarCraft 2, it's one person doing things. There's a limit to the things that they can do, obviously. The skill gap is gigantic, but I think that it's a little bit easier to follow. There's people shooting aliens and bugs and...
It's war in general.
Yeah, definitely.
On that level, I can
content
agree.
Makes sense, right? It's like, as you said, it's war, right? So, and I actually can agree with that because I was actually telling you before we went live, I did watch the EU WCS finals, and I actually found that to be very exciting, and I understood what was going on. Then again, I have watched StarCraft previously, but I watched the international, and I always used to make this joke, but it's like, oh, it's just one little guy throwing purple magic at another little guy.
Yeah, and everything
boom,
has different
explosions,
names.
And don't get me wrong, I think like Dota and League and Heroes of the Storm as well has, just a great community and just a great opportunity for them. But for a person like me, who typically plays first-person shooters, I would look at a game like StarCraft, and not that I could necessarily relate as far as like what I'm playing as, and also I play console, so don't laugh at me, people, especially you.
No, I don't.
No
judgment.
okay.
But yeah, StarCraft's actually so different from a lot of those games where LoL and Dota has huge player bases, and they make up a gigantic portion of their viewer bases as well. Whereas with StarCraft, if you interview 10 people, like if you go to a BlizzCon and you grab 10 people and say, hey, how much StarCraft do you play? They'll be like, actually, to be honest with you, I haven't played in like a year. They haven't played that much, but they still love watching. They know the storylines and they follow it. That's actually very unique and different. But to answer your question of do we think it's going to grow in Legacy of the Void? Absolutely, to some extent. I think there's going to be more tournaments hosting Legacy of the Void. I know that DreamHack has plans to bring it back for the most part. They've had a few events, but it'll probably, at least for 2016, be more of a like every stop type of thing. And streams will be more vibrant and healthy and stuff like that. But I always, every time I say that, I hate to be the killjoy, but I want to caution people too. It's like, do not think this is a return to 2010 where you're going to have 20,000 people on stream for 3 years. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a little shot in the arm, and then after that's going to fall off again. But hopefully it's in a place where people can still make a living doing this, and everyone can be happy being entertained.
So what is the future of this genre then? I mean, if you don't think that there's never going to be this awesome time when RTS comes to the forefront and it has this perfect mix where it's going to have millions and millions of fans worldwide. Is there ever a future for RTS then outside of a small niche audience?
Grey goo. No, I'm just kidding. Not that. It's actually a pretty. That's kind of what my article was about. Is I feel like it's been bleak. Like Command and Conquer did not fade away. They like came in through a doorway, were shot 17 times, dropped down, and bled out. It was a terrible going away of Command and Conquer. Grey goo. The jokes aside, it was a lot of the Westwood guys. And the game is pretty trash. And it's appealing to like I said, a smaller user base. So if you come out with a bad game in an RTS field, and they're like, all right, there's StarCraft, Grey goo, what do you got? And they're like, really? No one goes near it. It's just going to flop. So Warcraft 4 is your hope. Obviously Blizzard's not talking about it, but there will be a Warcraft 4. I'm almost certain of it.
I think we'd be silly not to eventually.
Yeah, I mean, they like money like everyone else. So that'll be another RTS that they have on lockdown. There's nobody else making a Warcraft equivalent, not on that level anyway. So that'll be good. And then eventually, 25 years from now, another StarCraft. And I really do, that's super pessimistic. What a horrible thing to say. And when I wrote that article, people were like, Jeff, I grew up on RTSs, you idiot. They're great and they're gonna be around. I'm like, yo man, I agree with you. But take a step back and look at the scene as a whole. What other RTS are we even talking about?
Exactly.
People are like, Company Heroes. I'm like, what game? I've never heard of that.
I did want to bring this up. Now that you mentioned that, I know this is probably way outside of what you would imagine, but recently Microsoft did announce Halo Wars was actually coming back. Now, we don't know all that much information about it, whether that will be a console exclusive, which honestly I think it will probably be, but I don't think that's the smartest idea.
It was okay on consoles. People were okay.
It wasn't bad. I actually played it. I enjoyed it.
But I think that would be a great game to kind of bring into the PC space, right? Halo is a great franchise. It's well known amongst millions of fans. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, do you think that, and I hate to say this, but do you think it needs to be dumbed down a little bit and maybe presenting in a console? And that would be, I guess, for you as well, CatZ, because I know, both of you guys competed for a long time.
Well, there's StarCraft on Nintendo 64, which
was a great game.
The most god-awful game.
I purchased an expansion pack for my N64 so I could unlock Brood War on StarCraft 64.
It is one of the most brutally, horribly efficient games ever made. RTS is on consoles, if you would have asked me before Halo Wars, I would have had the same reaction for all of it. I would have laughed. Halo Wars actually showed that it's pretty possible to be okay. As far as dumbing it down, moving in the future, it just, I don't know. For me, it's more of like a philosophical question of like, what are you expecting? Do you want 30 million copies sold at midnight like Call of Duty? If you do, probably don't make an RTS. Do you want a subscription plan where 30 million people pay for it like League of Legends every month? No, you're not going to do an RTS. If you're okay with a good launch that people talk about and are happy with and goes down as, and this is something that Blizzard's really proud of, they're like, look, StarCraft's not the most played and bought game, but it's probably the best freaking game we've ever made. Like, they're really proud of that. And I think we as consumers can look at it and be like, yeah, you're actually pretty right. For us, we actually think that. So as long as you're okay with that kind of a launch, make an RTS. And I think Microsoft obviously has the muscle and the firepower. And Halo's a great franchise, like you said, and also that game was pretty okay on an Xbox, for God's sakes. I don't know how you can play an RTS on an Xbox, but they made it happen.
Reasons. Trust me, I did it.
Like, it's just a bunch of little rifles, right?
Yeah. If we've determined, though, that it's up to Blizzard to kind of be the savior of RTS and the guardians of it for now, what is the one thing that Blizz needs to do with Legacy of the Void to ensure that they do have a stable platform? CatZ, I know you've written about this at length recently. What changes does Blizzard need to make for Legacy of the Void, in your opinion?
There's just so many things. I mean, things that we've been talking and asking for forever. You know, the inclusion of some kind of skins or microtransactions within the game. That would be great to keep the players engaged. To Blizzard right now, we were talking about this backstage, but they've never been great at promoting their players from within and the teams from within. And if they did that and then they allowed for merchandise to be made not just by themselves, but like Valve does for Dota 2 or Counter-Strike, by the community in itself, by teams in itself, and promoted that, then I think we can sustain ourselves. I think we can do it ourselves. So they just need to give us the tools.
Okay. It's a huge. You can feel it too. What a shift for Blizzard that would be to make. Like any game they've released before, there have been small concepts like what CatZ is talking about, and it's definitely been done. But for the most part, Blizzard has handed unto the mere mortals like this product that has been just. They're like, this is the tears of Jesus. This is perfect, and they're like, yes, we know. Like, absolutely.
Thank you.
But all of a sudden, it's a world where CS:GO, and you mentioned this earlier, and this is a great point before the camera started rolling. CS:GO launched, people were like, that's a pretty bad reskin of Source, actually. I'm not really a fan of that. They're like, okay, and then they worked with some pros, they kind of balanced it out. Then they came out with a skin system, and it actually blew the game away. And it's because your player base is a lot of your lifeblood for a game. And again, with an RTS, I don't necessarily believe this is the make or break it moment. It's just kind of a question of what kind of game do you want. And I feel like you can have your cake and eat it too in this case, where it's like, no, make the perfect RTS, which you have. But then also like have, maybe you can't do skins for the whole game because it slows down Battle.net, which is the argument they make. Sure, then make it so that you have custom avatars. People are designing their own page, their profile page.
I mean, you took the question out of my mouth, but I was going with CS:GO next because it is a game that resurrected itself from the dead, and it did a magnificent job at doing that, in large part due to betting. There's also, active skins like you were talking about. Blizzard has the ability to add all of this and more. And one marked difference that I've seen between the two developers is that Valve very much over the past few years has been, okay, the community says something, just put it in. Oh, yeah. Just throw it. Oh, you want to fight? You played in a qualifier for DreamHack once and you finished 64th place. Well, now it says it on your profile when you're in. And those things may seem fairly insignificant, but it does build community trust. Do you think that Blizzard has...
brand loyalty, right?
Definitely. Do you think that Blizzard is capable of making those sort of decisions to get that sort of brand loyalty from their players?
I sure hope so.
I actually think, I would argue though that, and this is evidence of the Overwatch beta that just released, Blizzard does have fan loyalty, brand loyalty, 110%.
Probably the most, I would say.
I would argue the most.
Definitely.
I think part of the, I was actually telling you guys before, I want to go to BlizzCon because, I didn't particularly grow up with Blizzard games. I actually am a big fan of Overwatch. But I just want to see what the fandom is all about,
right?
It's
insane.
It's
man.
crazy.
It's insane
I saw
because
people cry when they announced the Dread Knight or whatever it was. Not the Dread Knight. What is it called? The Black Knight. For World of Warcraft, I didn't play it.
Oh, yeah. Well, but here's the thing.
None of us did.
We're all blank faced.
When I worked at Blizzard, I was the one person that was like, "Oh, did you complete the raid last night?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Totally.
Never played WoW.
Yeah, because when I remember, I believe
Death
it was
Knight.
Gamescom.
Knight.
Death
you.
Knight. There
Thank
you go,
you.
man.
Thank
I
you.
can get it
Not Black
eventually.
Knight.
Believe
Come
in
on.
yourself.
Yeah, I got there.
It's a harsh
questionable
term.
No, but I want to say, the like when I was watching Gamescom, right? Like, and Blizzard went live with their broadcast for World of Warcraft, and I think they did another thing for Heroes of the Storm. I mean, the crowd was just ridiculous.
Dude, yeah.
People all over the world love it. So I would argue that if anyone can do it, it would be Blizzard. They really just need that kind of push in the right direction. I know that that's something that you guys are certainly
question,
doing.
though. Is that really brand loyalty, or is that more like people have expectations from Blizzard? Because Blizzard has never released a bad game, right? Like every single Blizzard game is amazing.
And I actually
That's
will
true.
argue that, especially starting with StarCraft 2, we started to see the community start to voice very real concerns about lack of features, things that weren't present in earlier titles and things like that. And that has kind of been a design decision by Blizzard lately, has been to release very polished mechanical games, but not stand up a lot of the features that people expect around it. With Legacy of the Void, do you think that those features are going back in? Do you think that they're going to respond to all those concerns?
Well, that's the new world that I feel like, and again, I'm not any kind of spokesperson for Blizzard. I don't have any secret information. But I feel like we're seeing kind of like that happening, where it's like Blizzard comes out with games, and they didn't need criticism. They didn't. If there was criticism, you were an angry troll in the forum, and you probably were. And it's fine. Like, the game's going to be great. It's going to be transcendent. It's going to change the way these games are played. But now, with it being more kind of like we're seeing, like you said, Valve put it in. But even Riot's like they make changes to their game as well, and it's more geared towards the social experience. That's new grounds for Blizzard. So they're doing it, but they're doing it very slowly because I think it's very different for them. I don't think that that's necessarily their forte, and they're just kind of like, well, like taking functional ideas from other companies and kind of implementing them ourselves. A little bit different for them, I think.
I would say, though, that's actually a new ground for the industry as a whole.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think that's a Blizzard thing because, I could actually even attest to working very close at 343 on Halo and them being, at the beginning like, we don't know about this particular feature or this particular thing. Now that, they've stepped forward and they're like, okay, for example, Halo has skins. Halo has, packs where you can open and it's like CSGO and you can get rare and ultra rare items and legendary items. And it's like, eventually, one comes to that point because what you're starting to realize is just people, this is what they want. This is what the industry is gearing toward right now as a whole, and esports is feeling it, and it's influencing so many factors, right? I mean, when you think about like how Kickstarter has influenced the video game industry, crowdfunding in general, it's ridiculous. People are like, this is what I want in my video game now, and I hope that you can give it to me. And back then, developers were like, we're creating this awesome thing for you. Here's this platter. Here's this giant chicken that you can eat, and it's the best made chicken ever. And it's like, nah, man, I want it with barbecue sauce. You know what I mean? And that's kind of
that's with anything. Like, I mean, especially before we had centralized communities on the web or social media to be able to collect everyone's voice, game developers had to be ivory towers, right? They had to be, we present this information, you can come to us for this. But that's not the case anymore. And I almost think it's, in a weird sort of way, a detriment for developers that react so quickly to their community fan bases, because a lot of times the community thinks they want something, but they don't understand the implications of what that means to get put in. Sure. Exactly. So now you have a lot of reactive developers that are putting in everything that their community asks for. That's now an expectation from a lot of players. So when they don't see that from Blizzard, they get mad and they think, why aren't you putting X feature in the game? Why aren't you making X balance change? How do you think Blizzard has to respond and kind of walk that line between pacifying their community that is very vocal and just providing a good game?
I think they've been doing a really good job with StarCraft 2. Like, they've been doing this kind of weekly or bi-weekly, if they're busy, updates where their head devs will kind of just say, hey, here's what we're thinking. And people have discourse about it. And certainly you're still going to get the hyperbolic people that are like, like tearing their hair out, like, oh my God, this is the worst change ever. But what is cool is that changing of the tide where they are talking to people. And actually, I think for the most part, and CatZ can attest this or disagree, but it's like, I've actually felt kind of a more communal like acceptance and happiness with it, which is really weird to say because StarCraft as a fan base and as a player base suffers from like seasonal disorders. Anytime around the international and stuff like that, we all like put our black cowls on and we like hover through the night. We're like, oh God, we're all dying. Like it's really bad.
Hey, listen, it's every community, man. I can speak for a lot of them. Everyone's like cowering in fear.
$30 million, it's just really bad. But lately, because they have been so attentive to the community, I think people are feeling not forgotten and loved, and It's been really nice. So it's kind of a lame answer to your question, but to be like, actually, they're doing a great job, said Mr. PR from Blizzard, Jeff. You know, like,
Thank you very much, Jeff.
I think they're doing a good job.
Your check's in the mail, buddy.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Got
Though.
the Overwatch beta. So.
But no, that's a reasonable perspective because you do have a lot of people that are very, very knee-jerk to every single word that comes out of Blizzard because they expect constant communication and things like that. And I think that one of our writers actually who submitted some questions to us put it well when he asked, does a particular game or genre need to have an immense viewership or be massively lucrative to be relevant? Lots of traditional sports have rather moderate viewership outside of things like the Olympics. And I think the Olympics comparison is a pretty good one. There are professional swimmers all across the world. We get to see them once every 4 years. We make celebrities out of them. They have a dedicated community. Some of the most famous athletes are from that. Have you ever tuned into a swimming competition outside of the Olympics?
Every day.
Every day?
No,
yeah.
I didn't even
No,
know
but
they
I know that
televised
Mike
it.
Phelps eats 9,000 calories when
Boom!
in training mode.
And I think so does MVP. But to go back to your point before, though, StarCraft doesn't need a massive viewership in order to have a stable base, but it does need a certain amount of people to be tuning in on a regular basis to keep it healthy. Do you think that the level of viewership right now for StarCraft is healthy, or do they need to improve to create that stability?
I would say healthy is not the word I would use to describe it. I would say at that point in time, you are looking for ways to make it more interesting and get a few more. Like BlizzCon should, in the round of 8 and onward, have somewhere in the ballpark of 125, 130,000 people watching. That's a great viewership. I think that's fine. That is healthy. But if a DreamHack, we actually just had a DreamHack, and for our finals, it was something like 40 or 45, 50,000. That's on the more downward side. That's on a okay, well, let's look back at this. It's at the tail end of HOTS, so that's our excuse. But if we're halfway through the year next year with Legacy of the Void and we have 50,000 people watching a DreamHack finals, no, that's not healthy. So I do think Legacy of the Void, will provide the action for it. I think it's a good enough game. But I do think on the production level, and this is not excusing Blizzard, but this is getting away from it a little bit. I do think tournaments need to shake it up a little bit, and you're also at the mercy of your results, and hopefully we'll have more competitive results. We don't have the Stefanos, the Idras, the foreigners.
Right. Just to go into that, we need foreigners. We need foreigners to do well in order for the foreign audience to be able to relate to them, to be speak the same language. It's just what we need. More regional people, and that's what my article was about basically. Yep.
And I'd actually like to get to that right now. So let's pivot a little bit and let's talk directly about WCS, the league system for StarCraft. Yes. Obviously, this is a multi-tiered system across the world. Everyone meets up at the end after accumulating a certain number of points to arrive at BlizzCon. CatZ, you as a team owner, are you happy with the current WCS system? What changes, if any, would you advocate making to it? I
am actually happy with the current system. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid that they're going to change it. Mm-hmm. For the first time in a few years, we've actually seen foreigners do better. The latest WCS had the most viewers we've had in StarCraft 2 in the recent 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that was because it was foreigner against foreigner in the finals. But it wasn't just foreigner against foreigner in the finals. It was non-Korean against non-Korean that had to go through Koreans to get there, right? And there's the legitimacy that has been built up on for the last 5 years where Koreans have been dominated. You need Koreans right now because without them, I don't believe there's legitimacy to the tournament. Now, we don't want too many Koreans because we won't win. And if we don't win, the scene goes down
It's
forever.
actually real, though. It's funny to describe it that way, but it actually is. We've had really good non-Koreans, but to win those tournaments, like Snoot has done in the past, right. Snoot, a famous StarCraft player, it's not just beat 1 Korean, it's not even beat 2, it's not even beat 3, it's beat 4. And to beat 4 champion-level Koreans in a row...
it's a game of probability at that point. If you have 40% chance against each one of them, you end up with 2% chance to win the tournament, right? Whereas, if there's way less of them, if you have to play one of those and you have a 40% chance, well, maybe someone's going to do it. And then you will get that foreigner against foreigner finals.
Apart from getting more non-Koreans involved in the scene and on, big name stages and things like that where you can create legitimacy, what other aspects of the WCS system do you like? Do you not like? Do you like, for example, the current amount of games? Do you feel that the system is a good tournament setup? Would you rather see a different system, maybe even replaced completely something akin to, I hate to throw out a team game like LCS or something like that, but do you envision a better tournament system for StarCraft than currently exists?
I really enjoy it. I think it's and we'll see it at BlizzCon in the coming week. I think you're going to see top-notch competition. I like the best-of format. I like that it funnels down to a championship. I think that's really cool. I do agree with CatZ that you really want a system that has some Koreans, but on a minimal level, so that you can have more non-Koreans with chances to shine. That's just how it is for the viewership. But if you do that, you also have to have something for the Koreans because they are our most fierce competitors. And Korea right now is providing several leagues, and it's actually gaining in popularity, so it's doing really well there.
There's rumors of a 3rd league coming in for next year, so
Good too.
Korea's doing great.
So we also had a major announcement over at Blizzard just recently. Activision Blizzard announced that they're actually standing up a third company dedicated entirely to esports. They've hired the former CEO of ESPN. They hired the former founder of MLG to bring this in. Do you think that we're going to have a revolutionary change for Blizzard esports next year? Do you think that we're going to see something more akin to the structured leagues that we see out of the big esports right now?
I feel like when they're bringing in the big guns like that, like this guy, by the way, the guy that's heading up that division, I can't remember all his accolades, but it's just ridiculous. He's like the guy that turns a garage production into ESPN, essentially. I feel like that's the move where they say, okay, there's just too many numbers, let's call in the big guns, and we're going to transform a little bit. I don't think you're going to turn on ESPN in January next year, and you're going to see like a guy going through the latest LCS results. But I do feel like they're starting to move in the direction where they have to recognize that their viewer base is going to share some space with people that like games. And I feel like you're starting to see it too with a lot of the games that are coming out. Like they're talking about how it's an esports-oriented game, but they're also like, but here's how we spectate it. Here's how the casters do it. Like they're very conscientious of the idea that this game needs to be not necessarily TV ready, which is like the big, oh my God, did you say TV ready in video game? But like it needs to be ready to be produced. It needs to be viewed. That's the idea behind it. And I think it's awesome. And I also want to take this time to say that Bill Cowher's an idiot, by the way.
That's totally fine. So I'm all right with that.
I'm with it.
There's been a lot.
He was like he hated on esports, and all of a sudden.
I know. It's just, well, yeah. Not only do you have, to me, I hate when we get embattled in terminology, semantic crap. You know, it's just not worth it. I don't care if we're esports, competitive gaming, whatever the case is. I don't care how that fits in with anything else. I mean, we did a piece last week about poker.
Whether gaming's a
whether it's a sport or whether it's to me, that's totally irrelevant.
Exactly.
The point of what we're trying to get at is that people like competing. People enjoy watching other people compete at the highest level, and there should be organizations that are willing to support all of that. If we get into the semantic war of what's a sport and what's not, it's just irrelevant. So
I think it's less about it being a sport or not, right? It's advancing the gaming culture for people to recognize that it is a legitimate competition as well, right? I don't care if it's a sport or not, but there is skill involved.
Right.
And that should be recognized.
And we're now at the place where online viewership is surpassing TV viewership in a lot of circumstances for many shows. So I don't think that we have this debate anymore about, does esports need to be on TV? I'm sure, yes. Turner's trying it with CSGO. There are other organizations that will always give it a shot. We had the great CGS, CPL days way back when. Woohoo! So we've been there, but I don't think we have to be on TV anymore.
No.
Yeah, no, it's 100% right. Well, I actually did want to ask about, so the whole disconnect for me with StarCraft was always about the Korean players, right? Is it just kind of like a cultural thing of players just not putting in the time that the Korean players have been putting in? Or is it just that they're that damn good?
It's always, this is a subject that, people very close to StarCraft always bring up because it's actually not so clear cut, but the kind of long-winded answer is Koreans have been playing StarCraft at an extremely high level since 1998. They were the originators of, this is a competitive game and we're going to compete in it. They did it before there was replays built into the game. Like they would literally just talk about it, they would sit next to each other in PC bongs and they would play it. And as that kind of like echoed outward and outward, all of a sudden people are like, let's put this on TV, let's videotape this, there's VODs that people download, we're going to talk about this. So the infrastructure built up around it, but that's all kind of on the peripheral. On the internal, there were players talking to each other, like, that guy's really good, I'm going to practice with him. And they all leveled each other up for years, from 1998 and onward. Whereas in Europe and America, there was a lot of people who were like, that's amazing, we're going to do it too. But they were so few and far between, and a lot of times even just separated by, like, he's a German and that guy's a Russian, and they're good friends and they play great, but
they're not in the same
they're
house.
Not on the same house.
Yeah,
they're not sharing. They're not talking about 24/7.
They can be like, "Hey, dude, how do I beat this?"
All the best players aren't located within a 15-mile radius of each other. Basically,
Exactly.
Like they are
and yeah, it's culture. There's PC banks, like Jeff mentioned, in Korea. There's just team houses,
I always say it wrong, and
coaches,
everyone laughs at me, but yeah.
coaches, managers. There's just too much infrastructure in Korea, and that's what I've been advocating for the past 5 years or so, to develop infrastructure outside of Korea, and that it doesn't need to be physical infrastructure, but for example, like what I'm proposing with my article is that they create incentives in the latter, which is infrastructure in itself, virtual, and if they did that, then that provides the non-Koreans a platform where they can
I've actually always wondered about that, and that's actually something that I advocated when I was at Blizzard. It seems like that there should be some sort of reward, given the fact that if you engage with the game every day, you're playing on its ladder system. It's very much like a giant Swiss tournament in a weird sort of way. I realize that there are some differences there. They seemed opposed to it then. It got implemented in Hearthstone because that is part of the qualification to BlizzCon. Do you think that that's necessary for StarCraft 2? Do you think there should be an incentivization in the tournament scene to playing the game at a high level?
Yes, especially if you want foreigners to be competitive. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need, and that gets rid of barcodes as well, which I'm sure most of you or many of you don't know. Like, it's a huge issue where people are just staying anonymous and everyone is a barcode basically. So there's no nicknames anymore, and that just makes for a lonelier game and a crappier game. But yeah, if they create incentives for the ladder where you have to ladder with your own nickname, then that's fantastic. It gets rid of barcodes, creates more better players, storylines. Yeah,
it's really cool.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about money in StarCraft, and we actually had a question come in from our friend Greetorp. So he asked, crime in the world goes up when there's a disproportionate amount of income inequality. Do you think that this is analogous between the match-fixing scandal that we just saw and the current state of StarCraft? We have, to take a step back, we have a situation in StarCraft right now where the prize pool is basically all funneled to the people at the top. You either make a killing at it or you're not making all that much at the moment. And that is actually in a lot of different esports. But generally when you have those systems set up, you have people that try to find ways to make money. And Yoda, Poon Poon did just that by fixing matches in Korea. Do you think that that's a problem right now, and how do we solve that?
I don't think it's for us to solve at all, honestly. It's like a self-fixing thing, but This also originally, well, not originally, excuse me, but perhaps the other biggest case of match fixing in StarCraft was Savior back in like 2006 and 7, 5 maybe, way back in the day as far as gaming is concerned. And at the time, he was so dominant and so good that he said, and I think most people actually believe this, that he actually could just kind of choose when he wanted to win for the most part. If not choose, then he was in the top 3 of the best players ever. And people started approaching him and saying, it'd be more interesting, actually, and we'll give you all this money if you were to dive on this one. He was like, yeah, why not? And he was one of the most well-paid, known, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was very wealthy. To this situation now, the guys that were involved were of the lower spectrum. They were having a tough time making ends meet. It's more recent. StarCraft 2 is not bringing the dough that it used to, especially for those players. So in that case, I think Andre is absolutely, you're onto something. That's absolutely right. There is no way to fix that. It's not like we all say, like, let's kickstart all of StarCraft. Like, we're not going to raise money so that all the players make more money. I think the way
could potentially bring in the question of a regulating body, and I know this has been thrown around all of esports for so long, but it could have the potential to help some of these things from happening.
Gamers going to game, Kevin. Gamers going to game. Like you can bring in a governing body, and that would just make, I feel like, the throws more interesting. Like, there's still going to be a bookie that's going to approach a player and be like, I'll give you 20. Like, that was the number that was thrown around.
Right.
$20,000. Very successful players in all games across the board are going to look at that number and be like, yeah, that's kind of interesting, because it's not even necessarily throw this best of 3 in the grand finals. It's drop this match in the round of 9,
or a map even.
Oh no, it was like the round of 48 or something like that in Code A was one of the matches. Yeah, I remember that. So do you just have to have a more stable system for the players then to try and alleviate that? I know you say you can't fix it, but there are ways to help. You don't hear a lot of high-profile LCS matches that are thrown right now. All their players are subsidized. They have salaries. They live in team houses.
That's the thing, though. It's a lot harder for teams to throw, right? Because you have to go to your teammates and be like, hey, guys. Like,
exactly.
How about we all throw? And
yeah, totally true.
Yeah, and they have their issues too. They had a player that tried to commit suicide, and you know, like it's just in a gaming world with competition and money flying around. You're going to have your Pete Roses, you're going to have your Kurt Cobains, which is a weird example because he's not in music. But the point is, you're going to have these issues.
Sure.
And you just need to mitigate how wild it gets. And I think in StarCraft, with how hard they come down on these players, like they were arrested, they're blackballed from the game forever that they love. Yep. That's about as hard as you can get. It's a good deterrent.
The timing was great too. It was right before Legacy of the Void. It was setting an example, but it didn't really, affect the scene in Heart of the Swarm because it was towards the end. I think it was very well handled by CatZ.
So as far as in-game features in the game go, what do you think that StarCraft players are calling for more than anything else right now?
Well, everyone keeps saying skins, and I think that is the dream. I can speak to this, I'm pretty sure. If not, then you'll know why I'm fired next week or whatever. But we asked about this at the summit that we attended, and it's the big thing that everyone keeps talking about, skins. Like, can we get that? CSGO has, it's amazing. The short answer is because everyone logs into like a central, and again, I am not a programmer, so there's gonna be people who are like, Jeff, that's technically not right. Okay, blur the lines a little bit, just kind of meet me in the middle.
Yeah.
They generally said that if so many people have custom skins, their big fear is that 2 people log in, they have a 200-200 match with all these skins that are being loaded and processed, and it slows down the game. And the average person's not going to look at that and be like, well, we both have a lot of skins going on here. That's why it's slow. They're going to be like, StarCraft's a shitty game. This is really terrible. What a horrible experience. I'm never playing again. So they want to make the game as streamlined as they possibly can for the average person. And a lot of people are like, well, let's turn on and off skins. And that's a cool idea. So the people at the high-end computers could do that. But again, do you make it default on or off? Like, it starts to ask questions that Blizzard, in general, what they're going to tell you is they want you to flip the box over, see the general requirements, and they don't want that to be high. They want it to be as low as possible, and they want you to plug in the game, play it, and have it be as smooth and fine and good as possible.
And they've been excellent at that over their whole history.
Which is what they're going to do.
Right.
So no skins.
Yeah, it seems like that's always going to be their priority, which is to make sure the game is optimized so that anyone can play it. And I don't blame them for that because that's their MO, right?
I guess, but I would argue that they've maybe shifted a bit too far in that direction, you know? I mean, we do have the same amazing, mechanically sound, beautiful games come out from Blizzard every time, but let's look at a few of their last releases. StarCraft 2 comes out without many of the features that were present for tournaments and esports features, replays, etc., that existed in Brood War and Warcraft 3 before that. Diablo 3 came out, and mechanically, very solid game, very good game. Tons of issues plagued it from a feature set, from the auction house, etc. And it seems like this has been a trend lately with Blizzard. Do you think that maybe they can turn this around? Maybe they can fix that, bridge that gap a little bit?
I personally think so. I think that there are things that, if not skins, maybe you can spray paint on the map or something. You know, like there must be things that they can think of.
Think outside of the box, right? You know, the one thing that always bothers me, and again, you know, coming from Call of Duty and Halo, I would say that this is something that you hear all the time. Oh, we want to be like CSGO. We want to be like League of Legends. It's like, well, why don't you do something a little different? Why don't you like try and innovate in the space? Why don't you call for innovation rather than replication? And I think that's something that maybe if anyone could do it, Blizzard would be the ones to do it, would be to come up with something that's just different, right? Different for StarCraft, a different way to just show your love for the game that you play.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. I would hope so, at the very least. I don't think skins are necessarily the answer, but some other system.
Personality.
Personality to the game is important. I don't think skins for the units may necessarily be the case, but you know, maybe like customizations for your home bases. You know what I mean? Like just small things, right? Little minute details that could actually show some more personality and customization and personalization in turn.
Okay, awesome. And then one last question that I have here is, do you think that if StarCraft is able to present the features that players are looking for, do you think the pro players would come back? Do you think the pro players would come back to the scene, or is that entirely dependent upon the level of popularity that we saw in 2010?
Well, just to frame this for the beautiful, awesome IGN audience as well, when he says come back, he doesn't mean that all the pro players left.
That's right.
He just means that a lot of them have, and they've moved on. And could StarCraft do something to entice and enlarge the pro gaming scene and bring a lot of those legends back? I think so. And I actually really like something CatZ talked about that I think is kind of an easy fix that could use more attention here. As a guy that's been playing these games for as long as I have, which is weird to say at this point in time, 18 years now, the few times where, and I'm not saying that petulantly or bitter, I've been very well treated by Blizzard, but like the few times where they've been like, hey, here's a little thing, or like, how about you come out and talk to us and play this show match? Like once I played a private show match against Artosis that was watched in the like Blizzard Stadium by all their people, and that was like one of the coolest things I've ever done. Unfortunately, Artosis won, so it makes it one of the dumbest things I've ever done. But at the time, I was just like, wow, what a huge honor. And this is back in Wings of Liberty. It was just so cool. And it keeps me afloat and keeps me excited. Like, if there was a little bit more of the, like, hey, you're a Blizzard person, you're a StarCraft person. Like, we recognize that and appreciate that. And we want to, kind of like, we had this cool show match idea. Again, they're doing the Boxer versus Yellow with MVP and Nesty.
Yeah.
What a cool handout. Like, these guys are
cool.
not playing StarCraft anymore. People are going to get really excited about it. Those guys look at it and go, okay, StarCraft is a part of our soul. Like, things like that, I think, do so much good that a little bit more of that would bring back a lot of players. But it would also, it's a win-win. It excites everyone, I think.
Definitely. And Paulo, for you, what do you think is the one thing that your players are looking for right now? What's the one thing that they want to see? Not in terms of, like, we talked about region locking, we talked about getting more foreigners in the scene. But what's the one thing they really want out of Legacy of the Void, just as players right now?
Just as players, I suppose the best game that they can have right now. Legacy of the Void is, in my opinion, a much superior game compared to Wings of Liberty or Heart of the Swarm. There are still design issues and balance issues. I had a show called The Patch, for example, where we brought up a lot of these. But I kind of stopped it because even though, like Jeff said, like Blizzard has been a lot better in the last year or so at communicating what they're doing and why, and sometimes the reasoning, I read it and I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense, but they're trying.
Sure.
But what they don't really do is connect with the players or be like, you know what, I like that feedback. Like, let's talk about that. Or even if not publicly, at least privately. If I'm putting a lot of time, for example, my article, right? Like, I have no idea if anyone at Blizzard has read it or what they feel about it. No idea. So the same with my show. I'm like, I wonder if they're watching it. I wonder if they're taking the opinions of some of the best foreigners playing right now the game and doing something with it. And like that sort of thing, just communication a little bit more personal maybe and a little bit more rewarding towards the players and the people that are involved and committed to this game and to Blizzard games in general.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you very much, folks. I think that's all the time that we have this week. So thanks very much to Jeff and Paulo for jumping on this roundtable. We will catch you guys next week, of course. We're actually going to be talking about a little bit about LoL Worlds and also money in esports. We're going to have Liquid112, owner of Team Liquid, and we're going to have Jason Lake, owner of Team Complexity, on to talk about what they think about the current sponsor landscape. Have a great weekend, folks, and we will see you next week.